Welcome, everyone, to the Illuminated Mind podcast. I'm Matthew Brownstein, founder and lead instructor of the Institute of Hypnotherapy, and I always work to bring on guests that have a relevant topic to the field of hypnotherapy. We quite often deal with weight loss. So I'm here today with David Greenwalt, who is a specialist in fitness and nutrition. So welcome, David. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, right on. So, with us today is certified health coach, fitness expert, and author David Greenwalt, husband, father, former police officer, gym owner, competitive state-level bodybuilder, and powerlifter. In 1997, at the age of 32 and a body weight of 235 pounds, David discovered an evidence-based approach for getting off his own 50 excessive pounds and keeping it off for 25 years and counting. Since 1999, through his company Leanness Lifestyle University, David has been helping student members from every walk of life lose excess fat, keep the muscle, and manage this crazy life. So congratulations on losing that extra weight. I don't see that many clients anymore, but recently I had a client who referred his girlfriend, and we did one session, hypnosis, change your mind, she lost like 4 pounds within a week. So I know how when you get the right mindset, you can make major change. But maybe we can start just with your background first before we go into some of our talking points. Your bio is pretty clear, but what can you tell us about you?
Sure. Well, thank you. For whatever reason in my DNA, fitness has always been there since I was a young boy. In grade school, I remember wanting the President's Council on Physical Fitness Award. I wanted that award. And, I wasn't a good or a great athlete. I'm B team, C team, maybe. I definitely wasn't the A team kind of athlete, but I've always been interested in fitness. So, that President's Council Award was throw a baseball a certain distance, run, a certain distance for time, and broad jump a certain distance, things like that. And I got a couple of years, and I've still got the patch and the sticker and the certificate tucked away. I was just so proud to get that. And I don't know, it was just something that I found interesting, intriguing, that I admired. In my senior year of high school, a friend asked me to come train with him in the gym, and that started a bodybuilding adventure and powerlifting adventure that went for, really through today. I don't compete anymore. I haven't competed for a while now, but in my 20s and 30s, I competed in bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I was a police officer at the time. When I got out of the State Police Academy, I was an Illinois State Trooper. When I got out of the State Police Academy, at that time, I started a supplement company, and I started it with the intention of just making enough money to pay for my own protein powder. That was in 1992. Started in a tiny little room in my house. There was no internet. I'd placed little classified ads in the back of magazines, bodybuilding magazines, and gave a toll-free number, and people could call, and they had to leave a message because I was a trooper and I was working 40 hours a week. Anyway, over about 5 years, I grew that company into about $5 million in revenue and 45 employees. So it did much better than I ever imagined it would. And through that, I ended up with tens of thousands of customers. And the internet was just coming in then. And so as the internet came in and people knew that I had done bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I would get down to 5 or 6% body fat for bodybuilding, and I would bulk up to 220, 230 pounds for powerlifting and get back down. And I wrote about it, and I wrote about it also from kind of a Ralph Nader perspective, where I was like the truth seeker, in evidence-based nutrition and evidence-based supplementation, and were the supplement companies really telling us all that we needed to know, and all this kind of thing. So I was a trusted source through that company, and they started emailing. Hey, Dave, real quick, if you wouldn't be too much trouble, don't want to bother you, don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you could just tell me real quick how I can lose 30 pounds and keep it off forever, that'd be great. Just, a couple of minutes, if you could just, a couple of sentences. Well, I wanted to him so bad that I gave it the old college try, but I saw quickly that the answers were just incomplete. They weren't taking into consideration the person enough. There wasn't enough detail on either end. And so I wrote a book in 1998. Took a year to write the book. It was 500 pages. And I wanted to make sure that book covered nutrition, exercise, and the huge element that so few, especially back then, were talking about, and that was the emotional fitness element. So I was so inspired, and I was so enthusiastic about wanting to help people get from someplace less healthy and heavy to someplace healthier and leaner, that I sold the supplement company. And I went all in on the company that we're talking about now, Leanness Lifestyle University, or the company I run now, I should say, now that we're talking about. And I've been virtually coaching people through transformation since 1999.
It's awesome. It's so important. There's so many people doing this, but everybody has their own unique calling and way to do it. And curious to learn more about your approach. But generally, there's so many people who are overweight. We all struggle with it to some degree. What do you
Sure.
think is fueling this? So what do you call it, an obesity epidemic? And
Yes,
in your opinion, what do we do about it?
absolutely. So, in the United States, we're sitting at about 43% of adults as obese right now. In 1970, we were about 15%. So we're about 2.5 times more obese now than we were, 52 years ago. We're projected to be 50% obese by 2030, just 7 years from now. And I don't see any reason why we won't be.
Mhm.
And the reason I can say that is because of the trajectory we're on. But we're in an incredibly obesogenic environment. Obesogenic just, essentially meaning all of the contributory factors that promote the enhancement or excess, consumption that leads to obesity. Everything from consumption to output, but it's a caloric balance, of course. But we've got incomplete and inaccurate messaging top down at the various highest levels from government entities and from the highest level health educators. It's incomplete, it's inaccurate, and it is doing people a huge disservice because it is not taking into consideration the incredible negative impact of ultra-processed foods. Collectively, this isn't just a singular component, but if I was to say, what's the single greatest contributor to our obesity position that we are in right now, I would say all factors that contribute to the excess consumption of ultra-processed foods, including the fact that ultra-processed foods are addictive in and of themselves. So, so what are some of those factors? Well, number of fast food establishments in the last 52 years exploded, hundreds of thousands in the United States. The availability, cheap price, convenience, it's all there across the board with regard to ultra-processed food. Those factors hold true: cheap prices, convenient, availability. 50 some years ago, there wasn't 24/7 access. Stores closed. If you didn't get something to eat by 8, 9, 10 p.m., that was it. There was no going out. It's either what was in your house or you waited.
Right.
And now, of course, that's not the case. 24/7, anytime you want it. Hundreds of thousands of convenience marts, gas stations, mostly used to be gas, and now they're really convenience marts that also sell gas. And so, and the stuff that's in there, 90, 95% of what's in there is ultra processed food. We look at government subsidies. What crops are being subsidized? The crops that are being subsidized, corn, wheat, soybeans, so forth, are the ones most likely to be turned into ultra processed foods. So I say it in this, I'll just say everyday person's speak, where I say we're the monkey banana relationship. We're all monkeys. So what's the banana that's driving us, and driving the production of ultra processed foods and driving the messaging from top government sources, top health educators, American Academy of Dietetics and Nutrition, so on and so forth? What is, promoting them to give the message they do? What's promoting big food to produce the ultra processed foods they do? And that monkey banana relationship is money, 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 profit, profit, profit. Now, I'm not against profit. I'm not saying these are evil entities and they've got this malevolent base. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that the relationship being what it is, and profit being the primary driver, it drives incomplete, inaccurate messaging. Moderation in all things. Eat less, exercise more. That's it. That's the messaging. Moderation in all things. Eat less, exercise more. Take personal responsibility and try to limit your number of stops at McDonald's. End of story. I mean, that's oversimplified, of course, but that messaging overall is what has been put out, generally speaking, and they don't take into consideration at least 3 other major elements that we strongly consider when we're looking at how do we help someone that is wanting to get from that heavier place, less healthy, to leaner place and healthy. You can pause for a second here and see if anything has come to mind.
No, it's good. I mean, as a hypnotherapist, I'm very interested in the mental part of this. And I hear you that there's just a lot of junk out there, like literally, right? You can go to these
Yeah,
fast food stores, go to your convenience store. A lot of us, though, are conscious enough. We know if you exercise more, if
yeah,
you eat less, if calories in, calories out.
yeah,
But why don't we, from like the men, I imagine the answer is from a mental side, but why don't we just do what we all know that we're meant to
yeah.
do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that is, to me, that's the old game show, the $64,000 question. That's the $64,000 question right there, right? It really is. Because if I was to grab a bullhorn, get on the tallest building in your city, I could just scream through that bullhorn, eat less and exercise more. And people would look up, some would look up and be like, yeah, I know, I got it. I've known this for 50 years. This isn't anything new, but I just keep screaming it, eat less and exercise more. But like you said, so why aren't people doing that? If there is, first of all, let's make sure that we're clear. Calories are king, but they're not the only thing. And I want to make that up front, at least before I get into kind of why, in my view, don't people do it. It's important that people don't. It's important that people know, with all of the inaccurate misinformation that's out there, they don't glob onto it's hormones, hormones, hormones. Don't get me wrong. Hormones are important. Hormones are impactful. There's a chicken and egg. There's a circular aspect to it. Hormones affect this. This affects hormones, and then we eat this and that. It kind of goes round and round, and it's a chicken egg thing. Hormones are important, but calories are king. I can get you to any body fat you want eating nothing but butter, if you'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can get you to any body fat you want eating nothing but M&Ms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there is an equation, a mathematical equation, that where we can find someone's total daily energy expenditure. Okay, big phrase there, but total daily, it includes all of your the calories you burn sitting doing nothing, the calories you burn fidgeting, the calories you burn daily activity and exercise, calories you burn digesting food, and we can calculate that. And Matthew, if I was to calculate yours, and if I had your age and gender and weight and activity level, I could get it close within a few hundred calories a day, probably wouldn't be off by more than that. And I could tell you within 300 calories maybe, how many calories you need to maintain, how many calories you need to gain, how many calories you need to lose. And if you were a robot and you would just do that calorie, whatever we're looking for, you would get a gain or the same or the loss, whatever our goal was. And over a 6-week period, if you said, Dave, I want to lose about 5 pounds in 6 weeks, I could say, okay, doing the calculations, here's what we need for output, here's what we need for input. And if you were a robot, didn't have any feelings or emotions or anything at all going on, just you were purely rational, and you did that, you would be, give or take a pound, right there. So to me, a refreshing aspect of this, or an encouraging aspect, or something that is kind of good to just hang on to, is this isn't a mystery. Like the math of it, since no one gets to violate the laws of thermodynamics, there is a math to this. But here's the thing. That's why I say calories are king, but they're not the only thing. So calories do matter. They are the single greatest factor with regard to, I'm going to say, weight loss, because you can lose a ton of muscle if you just ate nothing but butter. You need to lose a ton of muscle if you ate nothing but M&Ms. There's no protein there and so forth, right? So there's lots of factors that go into it. But we're just talking about getting rid of fat, and didn't care what the quality of the weight loss was. The calories will do it. So you go, okay, so I want everybody to take, I want them to have confidence in knowing that there is a math to this, and we can calculate. You're not terminally unique, as I say. We can figure you out. All right. So then it comes down to, so what is going on? If that's the case, why aren't people doing it? There is, first of all, again, that overwhelming, for most people, unless they're educated and supported, aspect of obesogenic contributing factors. So external and internal factors that contribute to the excess consumption leading to obesity. People, remember what I said, way back when the internet first came in and email was first here, and people were emailing me and they were saying, hey, Dave, real quick, don't want to be a bother. No big deal. If you help me, get off 30 pounds and keep it off forever. That is still a mindset to a degree of how people come at this. Everybody eats, everybody moves to some degree, and it shouldn't be that hard. It's just eat a little less, exercise a little more. There may be a little secret I'm missing, but, and so people come at it much less aware of everything working against them that they're going to need to, in my opinion, become more aware of, so that they can have the tools and strategies to counter those elements and move forward in a progressive way. So I say it this way, I don't mean it literally. I can teach you what you need to know about nutrition for health and fitness in about an hour. I can teach you what you need to know about activity and exercise for health and fitness, general health and fitness, in about an hour. Let's assume that you actually have the real information. Let's just call it the Dave Greenwalt real information on nutrition and exercise, not something that's come out half-baked from some source, but it's good and it's solid. And I asked you what's good nutrition, and you can regurgitate it back to me, and what's good exercise, and you can regurgitate it back to me. Then there are 3 pillars that we focus heavily on, and this is kind of where it finally gets to the rubber on the road for your question. What's driving willpower? And so what I look at is intrinsic motivation. What's driving willpower, intrinsic motivation? And that primarily on a daily basis is going to come from what I call why power. So anytime we've done anything that has taken a long time and has been hard, or is still ongoing, progressively requires our attention, requires detail, requires that we do things at a specific time and day and that we might not otherwise feel like doing. The reason we did those things is because our why was strong enough. Let me give an example. And it's just universally true. So for people that work for someone else, especially, when was the last time you were late for work? Most people will go, not, or very rare. Okay. Because we don't have to be perfect, but very rare is the answer we'll get most of the time, or almost never. Haven't been late in 5 years or something like that. Why? I mean, do you just love working for someone else so much that, you just go in, you're always in a good mood. When you go in, you're never tired. You're never just had an argument with your spouse. You never had the kids, 3 rugrats at home, driving you crazy, and you still had to go to work, and you just, you had everything going on. You had financial things, you had relationship things, you had no sleep, you had extra stress, and you still went to work. You didn't even just go to work. You went to work on time, and you probably produced pretty well for your employer. Holy cow, right? And so willpower, in my view, my kind of working definition is the ability to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. That's kind of my working definition. And so why power is driving that. Same thing if you've got small children who are in school, need to be picked up after school or soccer practice or whatever. When was the last time you just said, I just don't feel like it. I'm not going to pick you up today. The kid's still at school because you forgot him yesterday. No, absolutely not. Well, again, same thing. Were you always in a good mood? Why'd you pick him up? You weren't tired? You weren't sick? You, again, didn't just have the argument, didn't get chewed out by the boss, didn't get a financial statement that made your gut turn. Whatever life has thrown, of course, all that stuff has come, and you still went and got your child, and you were on time because your why was so strong to make sure that happened. You were absolutely going to make that happen. You got an advanced degree, higher learning. There's sacrifice. There's things that have to be done when it has to be done, whether you feel like it or not. The people that accomplish those things and anything like that have done it because their why was so strong. They just said, this is that important to me. My why is that strong. So too many people come at weight management with a weak why, because they've minimized these other factors. They aren't aware, they're oblivious to it to a certain degree of how many external factors and internal factors there are working against them to do this. You know, if someone wants to lose 30 pounds and keep it off forever, the process, when supported appropriately and educated appropriately, isn't harder than getting a PhD in psychology or something, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather have someone come at it with a mindset of, wow, so I need to take this with at least the seriousness and give it the level of importance and priority. Not that it's never going to be number one. Weight management in someone's life is never going to be number one, nor does it need to be, but it might need to be in that number 3 position.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you know, earn a living, take care of our family, 1 and 2, somewhere in there, you know, and then maybe the 3rd position, if they're, you know, if it's going to be at a super high level of importance, I always say the 3rd position is the highest it's going to be, and that's as high as it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot, you know, going, so they minimize it. They'll come in and they'll be like, why do you want to lose 30 pounds, 50 pounds, 150 pounds? I just like to feel healthier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get it for that. That's not gonna be enough.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna need more. That's a good start. I'm not saying that's bad. It's a good start, but we're gonna need to build on that. We've got to get that why, you know, strong enough to drive willpower so that you will do the things that need to be done when they need to be done, whether you feel like them or not. And so that's one of the 3 pillars. And there's 2 more. And I'll pause for a second because I know I can go into a monologue here because I'm just so passionate about it. But that's one of the 3 pillars beyond nutrition and exercise.
Yeah, well, based on my next question, you can maybe go into those other pillars, but I want to understand more about how to tap into the why, because in the hypnotherapy model, we clearly acknowledge a conscious mind, a subconscious mind, and we know your subconscious mind doesn't necessarily respond to your conscious mind's highest intentions, right? So the conscious mind says, I want to lose weight. Even if I answer why from my conscious mind, which is essentially where willpower is, right? I don't have the emotional drive or the deep-seated why. So why is willpower, the conscious mind, just not enough? You may have answered that already with the first pillar, or use the other pillars to help to answer that. But yeah, how do we really tap into emotional motivation that makes this, like you said, not effortless? It can be challenging, but where we can prioritize it to be in the top 3.
Well, let me just say that it obviously it gets gray and it gets there's a mix of that conscious subconscious, you know, like you know, and obviously you're the expert, and anybody listening to this in hypnotherapy is by far, you know, an expert on hypnotherapy compared to me. I only have that surface level, you know, basic understanding. I'm a fan of it for the right person and a I am. So nothing negative to say there. What I would say is that all manner of things psychologically, emotionally that we can do to get the subconscious working for us in an authentic way, or where it feels authentic, you know, we're going to do better. So some of this, we've got to have this why. And if some of that gets deep enough and emotional enough where it hits and starts to support the subconscious, and things start to become a little bit more automated and on autopilot because we've got the subconscious running the show here, and the conscious has got its mission, and the subconscious is driving things, you know, 90% of the time, maybe more, you know, but to me, they bleed into one another with regard to the why. Is that the whole answer on subconscious, the why? No. I think that hypnotherapy for sure could be supportive of the why, but I also think it's over here on the emotional fitness leg, where in that emotional fitness leg, there's a number of factors there. And that's where I would ordinarily say things that support the subconscious not thinking, but the things that support the subconscious effort to carry out orders better than any soldier ever known to man ever has. The subconscious, in my view, based on my reading research and with my clients, again, I think that when it comes to subconscious, you guys are far more an expert in that area. But from what I've seen and read and what I've seen with my clients, that the subconscious is running the show 90-some% of the time, thankfully. So our conscious has the freedom to think about other new things and novel things and pay attention to things that are not as ingrained in our everyday, habits and things. But anyway, I would say that's more of the emotional fitness side. So let me come over to the middle, and then let's come over to the emotional fitness where, maybe some of that subconscious can be, which hypnotherapy to me fits right in there. So if we get that really strong, we've stacked the odds in our favor. Have we guaranteed success? No, but we're stacking the odds in our favor if we've moved it past, I'd just like to get a little healthier. Or I'd just like to, if there's a just, then that's just a start. That's just a start. It's not going to be complete if it's just. So that second leg beyond nutrition the second pillar beyond nutrition and exercise, beyond why, this explains a lot. And it helps explain why really rational, good, smart, successful people do really irrational, seemingly odd behaviors that don't support their goals in this era. And that is compulsive overeating, addiction, that type of thing. So ultra-processed food is incredibly addictive for certain people. And it's a lot greater percentage than what any of the current research is. I'd say the current research, the published research, a lot of times is going to use the Yale Food Addiction Scale. Fine. It's been studied, it's been verified. It continues to be refined. And in my opinion, 23 years working with food addicts, it catches maybe half the people with compulsive eating issues, maybe. And so the percentage of people that it's finding, the published research is finding, in my view, is much lower than it really is. I think it's more along the lines of 30% of people that are overweight, and then if we get into obesity, it would just go up from there to a degree. Although there are healthy weight people who are also addicted and compulsive overeaters. But as the weight goes up and up and up, based on what I've seen empirical, the food addiction and the compulsive overeating goes up as well. So that's the thing. And here's the thing. We can have incredible why. Let's say it's just like, wow. And not impressive to me, but to the person, they're like, how would you rate this on a 1 to 10? They're like, it's a 10. I'm just ready to just go conquer the world. And each day you can ask them, how do you feel about this? I feel like I'm going to conquer the world. If they've got a compulsive overeating issue, compulsive meaning there's a negative consequence, but we still engage in the behavior. It's irrational. If we were just, again, dealing from a purely rational position, we would look and say, does that behavior support your goal? Absolutely not. Well, then let's stop it. Okay. I mean, but when we're talking about addiction, everybody knows in the addiction space, we're not talking about just a, objective, rational, position. And so we have to address that. If we don't, we'll have a great why. We'll have the person trying. And because they continue to get the message of moderation in all things, well, a quote is moderation in all things, including moderation. And that's one I subscribe to. Because for certain people in certain instances, in certain situations, at certain times of day, with certain emotional triggers, with certain food-like substances, it isn't going to be real food. No one's addicted to chicken breast and broccoli. No one. Not one person is addicted to chicken breast and broccoli. It's always going to be an ultra-processed food. If I ask anybody listening, one of your favorite, we'll call it treats, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, whatever that thing is, you're going to have to give it up forever. And I'm not saying people have to, but if I plant that and I say you have to give that up forever, some people will literally break into tears. No one's breaking into tears over chicken breast and broccoli. Okay. And the thought of, oh my gosh, how would I live without fill in the blank, right? Brownies, cookies, cakes, blah, blah, whatever it may be, chips, you name it. If we're not addressing that, if we aren't taking that and considering how we can help that person get their own, what I call a personal abstinence plan, which doesn't mean, all right, that's gone forever. It may mean at this time of day. It may be a window where it doesn't work for you because it seems to be after work between 4 and 6, you're vulnerable. But it's something you can have at 10 a.m. It's something you can have at a restaurant, but you can't really do it at home because you overeat it. And it leads to more and more and more. There can be quite a variety of situations, times, the ultra processed food itself that has to be addressed. It can make it seem like the why isn't strong enough, but really we've got a compulsive eating issue, and addiction makes things not make sense until you know what you're dealing with. And I have found that, my clients so often are successful in other areas. They're smart. They're good people. They've got plenty of willpower. They have demonstrated in so many areas of their life, they have willpower, coming out of their pores. But they're still doing these, irrational behaviors. So sometimes we'll find it in the compulsive eating side. Okay. Let's say that's addressed. Well, now it's about growth on the emotional fitness side. And to me, the way I define emotional fitness is to help people feel authentically good more often rather than regretfully good. If you binge on 1,000 calories, it might feel good for a couple of minutes and then you regret it. You can do retail therapy where you can go out and spend $500, put it on your credit card that you didn't have. And then you get home, you're like, oh my gosh, I got the bill. Now I got to pay this off. And you feel bad. Porn, you feel good in the moment, you regret it later. Things, whatever it may be. There are things that people may do where they feel regretfully good. They feel good in the moment, they regret it later. Emotional fitness is about strengthening behaviors and strengthening growth within oneself so that you do feel authentically good more often, and you're better able to manage life. All that life throws at us. A phrase I use is we want to eventually become emotional or lifestyle ninjas. It's like whatever life throws at us, it's like I'll use this strategy. I'll use this element of emotional fitness. I need to focus more on what I want rather than negative and what I don't want, which is where my mind has been for the last 2 weeks or whatever. Gratitude, connection, compassion. Maybe I just need more sleep. Sleep is a huge, huge component of emotional fitness. I tell anybody, give me 3, 4, 5 days of 5 hours or less sleep, and you'll find me under a laundry basket sucking my thumb. I mean, I'm just a wreck, and most people are, even though they may not admit it or they may not think they are. They're not functioning. I say to some people, when I get to know them, sometimes I'm like, I'm not really talking to the real Matthew right now. If you were my client, and you hadn't slept in 5 days, I'm not even talking to the real Matthew. Matthew needs to get sleep, before we can say I'm talking to the real Matthew. So anything you say, whatever you say about life, whatever you say about anything, you have to just take with a grain of salt when someone hasn't slept. So anyway, I didn't mean to get out on the sleep thing, but it's a big part of emotional fitness. So if we've got nutrition and exercise solid, we're putting a lot of focus into that why, really drilling down, trying to get to the heart of the matter, really trying to get it as emotional and driving as possible. Really figure out why, who cares if you lose 30 pounds or 50 or 80 or 150? Well, they'll go, well, I do. I know, but why? So we drill down and we get that. Great. But if we've got compulsive eating and we are aware of the things going on there, and here's the thing I want to say about compulsive eating or addiction. People generally fall down with the same thing, give or take, same time of day, same general circumstance every time. It's not 100 different things. They don't have 100 different trigger foods, ultra processed foods, time of days, that kind of thing. There's 5, 6, 7, maybe 10. And so a really nice, again, to me, comforting and encouraging thing there is if we can identify those things and we can get to acceptance quicker, because there'll be some grieving that makes sense, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. If we can get to acceptance quicker, then we can get through the process of figuring out that person's personal abstinence plan. Now we've got a why. Now we're addressing this stuff here that makes it helps us understand why there was so much irrational behavior, and
Mhm.
we can slow that. We can do at least reduction, if not elimination. I don't mean of the food itself, but of the behavior, and all the while strengthening emotional fitness, so that, as Viktor Frankl, is so famous for saying, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space.
Mhm.
And in that space, we retain the right to choose what our response is going to be. And that is, there's a level of maturity, emotional fitness to be able to do that. Because for a lot of people, they're unaware. They're unaware of what's going on. And it's this. It's just the
Mhm.
stimulus occurs, and it's conditioned automated response. Pavlov dog, ring the bell, they salivate.
Mhm.
The thing happens, and boom, they go right to the food. They go right to the alcohol. They go right to the whatever. And it's part of it is because it's habit. Part of it is because that's just what they've done.
Mhm.
They've conditioned themselves to believe, to a certain extent, that they can't handle the situation. They've elevated the situation beyond what it is. A saying in personal growth is, let's accept the situation for what it is, but not make it worse than it is.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will go to catastrophics and things like that. And again, that's all part of emotional fitness, bringing the temperature down, bringing the volatility down, bringing the excess language and negativity down to more appropriate for what it is that just occurred. You just had an argument with your spouse. You're not now alone for the rest of your life, divorced, broke, living in a hovel or whatever. I mean, we pay so much interest on events that never occur. It's staggering. So when we can do better with that, and that's all in that emotional fitness side, all of it then supports the nutrition and exercise behaviors, which are those mechanical components that get us that fat loss while keeping muscle, or we can take our body to any place we want to go because we'll have the consistency.
Yeah, you're, in a sense, you're not preaching, but I would say you're preaching to the choir in the sense of it all leads back to the mind. Whenever I'm
Yes.
speaking about any type of change, because in my field, like, it's just your mind. So the mental, emotional side of it. So let's say somebody's working with you, work through your course, and they're getting the why and they're getting the emotional side of it. How do they even know what do you go in? I'm sure you do. Like you said, like in an hour you can teach somebody, but how
Yeah.
do you know what the right food is for you or not? I can hear stay away from the processed stuff.
Right.
But yeah, how do we discern that?
That's a great question. So I um, I have a working definition of real food, and I like to describe or define real food rather than trying to say stay away from this chemical or stay away from this or stay away from that, because in the United States alone, we have over 3,000 industrial additives. So to try to memorize 3,000 additives to stay away from, or maybe you need to stay away from caramel color, or maybe you need to stay away from, I'm not even going to get into that because there's just too many. So if we come at it the other way and we say, what's real food? Then I think we have a better view, and then everything else is processed for sure, and probably ultra processed. So this working definition doesn't have all the nuance of the science that it originated from. My working definition is adapted from something called the NOVA food classification system. NOVA food classification system was developed by a professor in Brazil about 10, 12 years ago. It is heavily being discussed and used in research current today. So it's very current. It's very, it's progressive in the sense that it's evolving, and I like it. There's a number of food classification systems. This one isn't perfect, but in my view, it's the best one because it looks specifically at classifying foods based on their processing. Okay. There are other food classification systems that get very specific on nutrient density, and that's a nutricentric approach. Does it provide the vitamins and minerals and fiber that we need and essential fats? And if it does, then no matter how it's processed, give it a thumbs up, And I don't follow that. I don't subscribe to that because there's too much research that has, to me, it's overwhelmingly strong. There's not a single piece of research I've seen in the last 10 years on ultra processed food where those who consumed the most did the best. It's the exact opposite, of course.
Uh-huh.
Universally across the board. And that's so rare to be able to say, where you go, there isn't a study that said this one up. If it did, somebody's going to find a flaw in it later, but I haven't seen it. So real food from the adapted, real food, whole or minimally processed edible parts of plant and animal. Start with that. Where if anything has been added to it, it's only whole or minimally processed ingredients commonly found in kitchens. So if we just make this, let me say it again first, and then let's make it so that it's like someone can wrap their head around it and go, wait a minute, whole or minimally processed edible parts of plant and animal, where if anything's been added to it, it's only whole or minimally processed ingredients commonly found in kitchens. So think of all your single ingredient things, plant and animal. It had to be removed from the plant, out of the ground, off the tree, off the bush, whatever. And it had to be processed to an extent to at least get it to us so we could eat it, right? So whole or minimally processed. And same thing for the animals, chicken, beef, fish, whatever it may be. Got to get it out of the animal and get it processed, get it safe for us to be able to consume. And hopefully if it's animals, then they were raised right, because everything they eat, we eat, and so on. All right. Once you've got that kind of single ingredient plant, single ingredient animal, so to speak, then if anything's been added to it, it's only whole or minimally processed ingredients commonly found in kitchens, spices, vinegars, oils, things like that. Once you go beyond that, you're probably getting into ultra processed. And so that's that's the general guide. What I strive to have my students work towards, if you never get there, that's okay, but it's trying to get to about 90% real food. That may seem crazy, but I'm gonna propose that not trying to get there is what's crazy, because for tens of thousands of years, that's just the way we ate. I mean, if how long has it been that we didn't eat that way? 100 years? 70 years? Somewhere in there. And I'm not saying it was perfect, and I'm not saying someone didn't have something that had a little something, but it was so rare and it was so little compared to what it is now. What's happened is my proposition is work towards 90% real food. That gives you that 10%, for one, being human, having an error, or just being like, I just want the whatever. Okay, 10%, okay. And as long as it doesn't interfere with your goals and your health and your life and all that stuff, right? So, because what's happened is it's upside down. So the research is showing that 60 to 90% of what adults consume in the United States is ultra processed food. So it's not a wonder that we're in this shape that we are, which is, by the way, unsustainable. The system is going to break. We can't keep going in this direction. It's so costly to be obese, especially morbidly obese. It's so costly financially, and just in all of the ways, healthcare especially, it's unsustainable. So I'm just really just wanting to get the message out there that at least, if nothing else, just start moving toward the 60 to 90% real food. As crazy as that sounds, no one can possibly do it. I can't imagine. It's what we've done for tens of thousands of years. It's what our body knows how to process, what to do with it. It protects our liver, feeds our gut, and all the things that, and our mind, and all the things that we're wanting to do with regard to health span and lifespan. So I don't know if I said so much that I missed the answer to your question that you asked, or if I addressed it in that real food definition.
Yeah, well, there's obviously so much for you to share. So we'll just take what we can get in this limited amount of time we have.
Right.
I think you did answer the question, is essentially avoid the processed foods, but go towards the whole foods, plant or animal based. When I was in Chinese medical college going through nutrition classes, I remember one takeaway that was similar to what you're saying is only buy foods on the outside of the supermarket. Like
perimeter.
But all those processed foods and all those aisles you can pretty much avoid. But yeah, basically the theme is healing with whole foods. We are getting towards the end of time. So if you had some closing words, maybe something you didn't get to say that would be important for you to share a message, what might that be?
If you or someone who has struggled, and despite best advice, guidance, their attempts to just eat less and exercise more. They haven't. And it's been a battle, whether it's the person listening or someone they know. I can't encourage you enough to keep going and never give up, because to me, it's not a wonder. It makes perfect sense, in fact, which to me is encouraging. It's, for about 7 or 8 years ago, I had this inexplicable mid-back thoracic back pain. Okay. Docs, I went to 15 specialists, couldn't figure it out. So I didn't know. I did the basic stuff. Of course I did. I'm in health and fitness, did and some ancillary stuff and extra, nobody could figure it out. Couldn't figure it out. Doesn't make any sense with all that I do and all the good things and the nutrition and everything, exercise. They couldn't figure it out. Finally, someone figured it out. And even though the process was not easy, and even though the process took time and it took money and it took everything, it took energy on my part to do it, I was so relieved to have the answer. And that's what I wanted, the message I want to get out to everyone here. It's not a wonder if you're struggling or someone who is. With the right education and the right support in all of the areas, you can win this. And that's the message I really want to say. I would want to close this. This can be won. Don't give up. You don't want to keep repeating the same behaviors and expecting different results, as we all know, definition of crazy. But if you get the right information and the right support, it absolutely can be won. And that's what I would want to say. So keep going.
Yeah, I appreciate the optimism. So if somebody wanted to get in contact with you to go through your program, your training, what does that look like? How does that work?
The easiest way is, 20 some years ago when I wrote the book, and I called it the Leanness Lifestyle, and the program Leanness Lifestyle University, because we're an education-based platform. That's a mouthful, 2 N's, 2 S's. So just what I would say is the easiest thing to do is just go to the website, and the website is lluniversity.com.
lluniversity.com. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, David, for being with me. I wish we had more time. We're pushing towards the end of allotted time. So thank you so much. I'm glad you're able to get your message out there. And yeah, maybe we'll talk about other ways to collaborate with our school and how hypnosis can help, or how you can help our graduates or whatnot. So thank you very much. And yeah, look forward to possible future work with you in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Absolutely.